What's up, everybody? Thanks for being here. It is the best podcast available. This is the Athlon Sports NFL Draft Show. My name is Luke Easterling. I'm the NFL Draft Analyst for AthlonSports.com, and we are launching a brand new show. We're excited to bring it to you. We're going to talk all things NFL Draft. We all know it's a year-round event at this point, and we're hitting a really big mile marker this week. We got the NFL Scouting Combine coming up from Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium. 300 plus of the top prospects in this draft are going to be there. All the teams, all the decision makers, the media, everybody's going to descend on Indy and watch these guys work out. They're going to have team interviews. They're going to have medical evaluations. It's a big event for learning a bunch of different things about these players. How much does it actually matter? What are the things that actually matter? That's what we're going to discuss today. We do it with ESPN's Matt Miller. He covers the draft for the Worldwide Leader. We have a fantastic conversation about what matters in the combine. We go through sleepers. We go through guys that are going to rise up the board. We talk about guys that could absolutely dominate the combine, who's going to create those highlight reel moments that are going to shock everybody, that everybody's going to be talking about coming out of Indy. Wide-ranging conversation with Matt Miller, who gave us a lot of his time as he prepares to go to Indy. I know he's busy, and he made sure to make some time for us for this, our first episode. So definitely stay tuned for that conversation. Before we get there, we've already got some news coming out of Indy. Before we even get started, a couple of the biggest names in this draft. We got Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback from Colorado. He's announced he's not going to be expected to throw at the combine, going to wait till his pro day. Again, not super surprised to see that from any top quarterback. It is a little bit interesting when you think about this quarterback class compared to last year's class. We knew Caleb Williams was going number 1 overall. We knew that Jaden Daniels and Drake May were probably going 2 and 3, even going into the combine. So there really wasn't much drama except for the next tier of quarterbacks. There were a few other quarterbacks. You had Bo Nix, you had Michael Penix Jr., you had J.J. McCarthy, and that was where the buzz was. So those guys did end up throwing at the combine, and it did have an impact maybe on where they ended up going. And so the interesting thing with Shedeur Sanders deciding not to throw is that those guys are not locked into the number 1 overall pick. Cam Ward from Miami in the same boat. So if you have an opportunity to go into this event and maybe, show and compete and say, hey, I'm the guy, you'd think you might want to take advantage of that. Doesn't look like Shedeur Sanders is going to be doing that. We're not sure about Cam Ward yet to this point. Jackson Dart from Ole Miss might have an opportunity to be that guy who jumps in and says, hey, I'll compete. I'll go out and show that I'm a first-round quarterback. So that's definitely one of the big storylines to be watching. Another big name that we're not going to see working out on the field, Ashton Jeanty, the top running back in this class, coming off one of the most amazing seasons we've ever seen from a running back at the college level. We won't be able to see him on the field, which is disappointing. I think he's a top 3 talent in this draft. I know he's not going to go that high because he's a running back. There's also low-key deep running back class in this draft that I think is going to go well beyond Ashton Jeanty and give us some Pro Bowl caliber players outside of the first round, perhaps. So it's a little bit disappointing we're not going to see Ashton Jeanty on the field, but we're going to see him this fall for an NFL team, and I think he'll make up for lost time there. So as we get you ready for the combine, again, my conversation with Matt Miller is fantastic. We go all over the place, hitting the combine from every different potential angle, everything you need to look for heading into this week. Stay tuned, and we'll check that out. Well, when you start something new, you want to start it off the right way, and that's what we're going to do here on the best podcast available. BPA is what we call it. That's what we hope it is for you. And what better way to start it off than swinging for the fences on the guest hotline, if you will. And we're going to go get my good friend Matt Miller. You know him from ESPN, NFL Draft Insider, NFL Draft Expert, whatever you want to call him. That's what he is. Matt, thanks so much for taking some time, man. I know it's a busy week.
Yeah, I had no idea it was your first guest. Now the pressure's on, right?
Yeah.
Like you buried that in the invite. Also, what a great name for a podcast. As somebody who desperately misses the podcast life, that is it. What a great name. I'm a little bit jealous, but also very, very excited for you.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad you're here. Again, it's been a minute since you and I have been exchanging like 3 a.m. text messages, breaking down fullback tape for the old NFL 1000 and the Bleacher Report days. But we're still breaking down the film at 3 a.m. It's just a little bit different now.
Right. It's very different now. I still have PTSD from NFL 1000. I will, when people ask like, how do you make it in this business? I'm like, well, I scouted punters for a while, and kickers and long snappers and fullbacks, but it's all fun. And, at the end of the day, you're getting paid to watch football. There are much worse things to do than getting paid to watch football, even if it's special teams players.
That's what it is, man. I know people ask me the same thing. They're like, "Hey, how'd you do it?" I'm like, "Well, I worked for free for a long, long time and did a lot of work
Absolutely.
that nobody read and nobody saw." Right?
Yeah. And then, you get to a part where you and I have been doing this a long time, and I have to like remind myself now, like I want to work more than I do now. I'm like, because we're so programmed to like be turning out content all the time. And it's wild, when you get to a certain, whatever level or tier or whatever it is, where you work less, which isn't always my favorite thing this time of year.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse to love what we do for sure, man. But when we look ahead, this is you and I, we're the nerds of this industry, and we know this is a full time year round thing. But the combine week always feels like the week where the whole rest of the football world kind of joins that
Yeah.
time of that process, right? So the combine kicking off. Everybody wants to know, what are the big things to look for? I'd like to peel back a little bit from that and start with the fact that I feel like every year, so much stress and so much emphasis is put on the combine, certain workouts, certain things. Why does it actually matter? I mean, the event itself, there's a lot to it, but what about the combine itself actually means anything? And what do you think is overblown about what happens in Indy every year?
Yeah. So what matters first and foremost, the medicals, and that's the biggest thing. It's having the opportunity to get an MRI on 300 players. That's what matters really more than anything else. You're going to have, gosh, I think it's 6 different team doctors now that you do basically a physical with each one, the MRIs to get the full medical background. Our good friend Matt Bowen used to tell a story about like he wrecked his bike when he was like 12 years old, and they were like, "What's that scar from?" She's like, "I wrecked my bike as a kid." And they're like, okay, like flipping through the charts to see if he was telling the truth or not. That's the most important part of it. Secondary to that are the team interviews, because, for this is the first time all the prospects are together. We had East West Shrine, we had Senior Bowl, and that's like speed dating. You get those very short interviews with some teams. This is the next step. This is the second date, where it's a little bit more formal, and you're really trying to, get to the heart of who the player is. You do still have a limited amount of time, but you've done your research. You're coming in with hard-hitting questions at this point, whether it be about off-field or on-field. This is your chance to get better answers. And then I think the third most important thing is the actual workouts. For some players, the workouts matter more than others. We know that. If you're a player who has a question about speed, your 40-yard time is going to matter more. If you're a player who has questions about your hands, well, the gauntlet's going to matter more. Agility, we want to look at 3-cone time. We want to look at individual drills. The most overblown part of the entire combine is the part that most people pay attention to, the 40-yard dash. Like if you told me that I had to eliminate one thing from the combine, it'd probably be the bench press, but then it would be the 40-yard dash. Like, those are the two things like I never need to see again. And I say this as someone who last year I was sitting there watching Xavier Worthy break the record and had goosebumps because it was so cool to be in there for that moment and the energy. Like I love that. And as somebody who now, spends at least some of their time on TV, those moments matter, right, for the audience. But from a football evaluation standpoint, I don't need to watch these guys rep out 225, and I don't really need to watch them run in a straight line for 40 yards either.
Yeah, it always feels, my cardinal rule on the combine is kind of similar to the Senior Bowl and Shrine Game, where it's like, if you go into these events with an idea about a player based on the film work that you've done and the resume that they've put together up to that point, if you're shocked by something you see at one of these events, it should only ever make you go look at all that again, right?
Absolutely.
Like it only should, if a guy shows up and he's like, "Oh, he didn't look that fast on tape," or he didn't look, he looked slower than that on tape. I didn't think he was that quick. I didn't think he was that strong. You should only ever make you go back to the source material, right?
Yeah, and so I agree completely. And I used to always say the combine was a tiebreaker event for me. I have evolved a little bit because there's so much value, I think, in seeing people in person. And I didn't get that early in my career. And I don't think I didn't get it because I didn't have those opportunities, right? I will say now, seeing someone in person does help me with my evaluation. Now, there might be 9 other people who, out of 10 who disagree with that completely. Just for me personally, it does help to see guys in person. to see quarterbacks throw, to see guys move, to size them up physically. That helps me. And you know this, Luke. I'm always like a whatever can help me do my job better. I'm going to use it, whether it be analytics or seeing a guy in person, like from one extreme to the other. So I think that's where I do enjoy the combine, because there are a lot of guys that, whether it's through the season or through East West Shrine and Senior Bowl, like I just haven't had a chance to see in person yet. Like I haven't seen Cam Ward in person yet. And so I am hopeful that he throws selfishly, because I want to see him throw in person. And if not, then it's like, okay, can I get to a pro day maybe? But that's like, again, that's probably very, very selfish of me.
I think the other thing that matters, that I think has nothing to do with the prospects on the field necessarily, is like, this is finally when all of the decision makers kind of descend on the same place, and now we start to see the contract extensions. We start to see the trade talks. We start to see these sorts of things. How much of that is a driver for the actual like drama of what happens in Indy, that we're finally going to get to see movement on a lot of this stuff with free agency starting in a few weeks?
So it's huge for free agency, obviously, because the agents and the decision makers are all in one place. And so free agency might not start till the middle of March, but it starts in Indianapolis. Everyone knows that. I think the other side of that is, you know, you do get all these NFL teams between the Senior Bowl and the Combine have had scout meetings. So you bring all your scouts in off the road, you start talking about these prospects. What inevitably happens is those people start talking to people like us. And so the Combine is huge for getting that information, you know, getting medicals on prospects, getting character on prospects. So you're probably going to see more movement in media draft boards following the Combine from those conversations, and less than, oh my God, did you see Luther Burden ran a 4.45? You know, like, okay, what does that mean? But, you know, if you go and hear, hey, you know, this player from the University of Washington has got some character, you might want to run it down and find out, okay, well, that might affect things a little bit more than how well a guy actually performs in the testing. And that goes back to why the interviews are so important, because I think the Combine, kind of as you were saying, Luke, is like the Combine exists to check things that we knew existed, whether that be injury, character, or actual ability. And again, if you're surprised by something, it's probably not a good thing at this point.
So you mentioned Cam Ward hopefully throwing, maybe throwing. We know Shedeur Sanders is not going to do that. I think we just saw that Ashton Genty is not going to do on-field workouts and things like that. There's obviously, you know, from some fans, there's a visceral reaction. We even see some media members at some points, you know, express disappointment or, oh, that's going to, and project that onto teams, right? Like, oh, he's not doing this. I wonder how they'll feel about that. Does that stuff actually matter? I mean, if you have a quarterback that doesn't want to throw till his pro day and he's got 4 years worth of film, is there anybody in an organization that really cares about a guy not working out?
I think yes, honestly. And I know that's not what, you know, draft Twitter wants to hear, but yes. So when the news came out that Shedeur Sanders wasn't throwing, I got a text from a director of college scouting, and he said, this generation, like, they don't want to compete. And I'm taking out some words that I don't know if we can say on your podcast, right? And so I think at certain positions, you want that. And I'm old school. Like I've been doing this for 15 years. I do want guys to compete. And if I'm Shedeur Sanders and I'm going to walk around, you know, telling everybody that I'm QB1 and I'm, you know, don't pass on me, I'm the guy. Cam Ward has said the same thing, right? I think if you're going to say that, I would love to see you back it up. I would love to see you walk out there with 15 or 16 other quarterbacks and be like, here's what a franchise quarterback looks like. This is how it's done. I'm not afraid to throw against Cam Ward. I'm not afraid to throw against Jalen Milroe or anyone else. Like, I'm the guy. I'm going to do it. And like, I remember Patrick Mahomes combine. I remember Josh Allen's combine. Those were like marquee events where you were like, damn, like that guy, there's something to him. And even guys who don't have a huge arm, CJ Stroud, his combine performance is one of the best I've ever seen for a quarterback. And I do think it helped separate him from guys in that draft class. Last year, you know, Caleb Williams doesn't throw, Jaden Daniels doesn't throw, Drake May doesn't throw, but JJ McCarthy threw, Michael Penix Jr. threw, Bo Nix threw. And I think it helped those guys. So whether it be Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart or anyone else in this class of quarterback, I would say in a year where there's not a you know, flag in the dirt, this is the number one guy. There's no QB1 this year, right? Take this opportunity to be that guy. Take this opportunity to prove that you're that quarterback. So that would be my only thing. And I know, like, there's so much that goes into it with agents. And it's like, oh, we want to get guys to come to our pro day. They're going to come to your pro day either way, by the way. Like, they're not going to miss your pro day because you threw the combine. So I like, and I don't, like ESPN doesn't broadcast the combine. No one has told me, hey, like, we really need Shedeur to throw because of TV ratings. No, we don't do it. It's on NFL Network, and you should watch it because they're great at it. But I just like, again, selfishly, I want to see these guys compete because it does help me do my job.
Anthony Richardson is the one that comes to mind recently where he just like, I feel like that, and you can argue about the on-field results since, but like that was the first workout I ever saw a guy like run off the field to a standing ovation while like understanding that like, dude, I just dominated this entire workout. Point. And I do think that's gotta carry some weight when they make those decisions, and he ends up going top 5. And I that can't have not had anything to do with it, right?
Does he go number 4 overall if he's not the most athletic quarterback ever tested at the combine? Probably not. Like, I don't think he does if he says, come see me in Gainesville. Because you know what he's not doing at Gainesville? Running a 40-yard dash up against like 220 other people and being like, he was faster than almost every receiver there that year. It's like that stuff, it does matter. And as much as we all use analytics and stats and hardcore data, we're all still human beings who are prone to momentum and excitement. And like, why not take that opportunity to generate that like visceral emotion in a general manager who says we hear so many of these stories, like whether it be Brett Veach watching Patrick Mahomes or the Rams watching Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. And like, you get this emotional attachment to the player that you're watching. I think if I were a player, I would want as many opportunities as possible to create that emotion in an evaluator.
Well, one of those moments that happened last year, you mentioned it earlier, Xavier Worthy's record-breaking 40-yard dash. What a moment that was in terms of just entertainment value. We kind of knew going in that he had a shot to do that, right? That it was going to be that kind of moment. I don't know if it's just me. I don't feel like there's that guy in this draft that I'm looking forward to his combine because there's going to be some set the world on fire, record-breaking performance. But if you had to pick a couple of names, a handful, guys that you're excited to see because we've seen the film and we know how athletic they look on the field, and we just know that this is their type of event, right? This is a place where they should shine athletically. Who are those guys that you're most looking forward to, even if we're not going to get that kind of Xavier Worthy moment?
Number 1 is Nicky Memori, the safety from South Carolina. And I love him as a prospect. I was late on him because he's a true junior. So when he declared, it was like, I was trying to get ready for Shrine Bowl. It's like, I'll get back to him. And then, people keep asking you, like, why haven't you hyped this guy up? It's like, well, I haven't watched him yet. That's why. I've watched him now. He looks like Derwin James, 6'3", 225. He's fast, explosive, strong. He should have a great combine. I think another obvious one.
Somebody asked me for a comp. Somebody asked me for a comp on him, and I gave him Kawhi Leonard.
Right. I mean, the speed. Yeah.
That was the closest I could get in terms of the athleticism, the defense, and then when he gets in the ball in his hands, he scores.
I love it, actually. That's a great one. I used Steph Curry for Bryce Young a couple years ago, and people got mad at me.
Yep.
I was like, well,
come on.
Sorry. Think outside the box, damn it. So Eamon Warrior's a big one. Shamar Stewart from A&M will test really, really well. The question with him is he's had 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons. So it goes back to, you can be the greatest athlete in the world. If it doesn't produce on the football field, how much does it matter, right? So that's the big question mark with him. I think Kenneth Grant from Michigan at 350 pounds is going to put on a show. It's different. It's not, with Xavier Worthy, 4.21 is an easily digestible number. We all know how fast that is. And that's the fastest time ever recorded. We're not going to get that this year. And I think with some of the guys who are going to do really well in drills, it's going to be at drills that aren't as easy to, like, for the casual observer to digest. Like a guy having a great 3-cone time, like, that's very position specific if that time's great. It's not as easy as, that's the fastest ever.
Give me that 10-yard split, baby.
Right, exactly. Even with the bench, it's like, I don't even know if they televise it anymore. It's like,
I don't think they
somebody
do.
Somebody getting 45 reps is crazy, but like, we just don't see it anymore.
Yeah, I don't. You mentioned Shamar Stewart. Am I wrong for seeing Trayvon Walker potential there? Like that type of versatile raw athlete, but chunk of clay, but that's kind of what Walker was. He had a late push up the board. I'm not expecting that kind of thing from Stewart, but would a team be wrong if they see that type of guy in him?
No, I think it's he and Michael Williams from Georgia are both that player where you see flashes. And with Williams, if you only watched him play Texas, you would think he was the top 5 pick, but you watch him play literally everyone else and he did nothing. So they're the two players where, you know, athletic ability will get them drafted much higher than what they actually did on the field. And, you know, I would say the Jags probably regret not taking Aiden Hutchinson. If they could do it over again, they would have gone with the guy who produced at a really high level and was still a very good athlete, but just not the 10 out of 10 type athlete that Walker was.
Yeah. Is there anybody who stands out to you going into this who needs a great workout, like who really needs to go and solidify themselves in whatever way they can do, whether that's, again, on the field or behind the scenes in meeting rooms, on the whiteboard, assuring teams of certain things? Maybe they need a great medical evaluation to kind of prove they're over an injury or something. Who needs to have a really great week at Indy to preserve their stock?
Yeah, two guys that stand out, and they were both, I would like, top 5 players before the season. Luther Burden, the receiver from Missouri, and Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Luther Burden had a rough year. You know, production was down. He had some like sideline outburst. He gained some weight to be stronger. He didn't look as explosive. So I think he needs to run well. He also needs to kind of calm some opinions about him that are out there. You know, I think he needs to show that, you know, yes, he was frustrated because Missouri wasn't good offensively last year and he had Heisman expectations that didn't get realized. I think he needs to just be upfront about that and say, yeah, I lost my cool. Here's why. I won't, you know, I'm not going to be a problem in your locker room. And then I think for Will Johnson, you know, he missed such a significant time with turf toe. He didn't look as impactful. He had 2 pick sixes early in the year. He looked really good, but he made a lot of business decisions as a tackler. I would say over the past year and a half, especially. So with Will Johnson, I get Derek Stingley Jr. vibes. I don't know if you remember that whole thing. Like he sat out the COVID year and then there was, you know, questions about, you know, is he going to be able to just snap back into it? He's been awesome for the Texans. And I think with Will Johnson, the same thing is happening where it's just being over evaluated. We're being really nitpicky about things instead of just remembering how great of a corner he has been when on the field. So I think both those guys, speed questions exist for both of them. I would love to see them both come out and run in the low 4.4s. I think that would put a lot of those concerns to bed.
Yeah, it does feel like Johnson in particular is one of those guys that are just it's just gonna be too overcomplicated. Like, don't overcomplicate this. Go watch when he's healthy. Go watch when he's on the field. And I feel like he's a top 5 talent in this draft at a premium position. So we've talked a bunch of different groups of players that we're kind of looking forward to. Who are the guys that are going to arrive at this point in the process with what they do in Indy? Who are the guys that we're not talking about enough? Maybe they're small school guys. Maybe they're guys that just aren't on the radar in terms of first, maybe even second round picks. Anybody that either has one standout trait or maybe just somebody that's not getting enough love. Who's going to rise coming out of here that maybe we weren't aware of as much?
Yeah, I would have said Grace Abel from North Dakota State, but he had such a great Senior Bowl week that I think everyone who follows the draft knows him now. Same with Mike Green from Marshall. He had a great Senior Bowl week. I tweeted this on Monday morning. I think Omarion Hampton, the running back from North Carolina, is going to have a fantastic week, and he's going to maybe show people why he's running back 2 in this draft. I think we've talked about how great this running back class is, but the fact that he's like, the gap between he and the next guy, whether that be Caleb Johnson or Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins, like it's a sizable gap. So I think Hampton's going to have a really big week. I think Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, is going to have a week where he arrives. I know like off-ball linebackers, you know, different teams have different feelings about them. I think he's got a shot to be a top 20 pick because he is so explosive. I mean, he even showed this past year, I think he had 5 sacks. And those 5 sacks are him just spying and chasing the quarterback. So he's got a lot of really, really fun traits. Those 2 would be the guys that I think I'm most excited to watch and see. Charles Grant, the tackle from UConn, is another one where William and Mary. I really want to see if we get a chance to see him. You know, he was a Senior Bowl guy that had to drop because he got hurt the last game of the year. So I hope we get to see him in Indy because at one point I had a mid-round 2 grade on him, and then I kind of got scared by the injury and he wasn't at the Senior Bowl. So that's one of those, like we were talking about earlier, like you want to see them in person. You want to see how healthy they are because like I would be comfortable putting him back in the top 50 if once we get the medicals and they say like, oh yeah, he's going to be good to go, because the way college is, I don't even have in my notes what his injury was. It's just he got hurt and had to drop out of the Senior Bowl because there's no reporting mechanism in college, so
We can't
that's
even
another
find
big factor.
birthdays on some of these guys, right? Like,
Right, exactly, or how many years they've played in college or what their eligibility is. It's a big mystery half the time.
I remember it feels like it's every year now, but like every year that they threaten that like maybe the combine's going to be somewhere else, like everybody, all of us in the media like freak out and then they announce it's going to be back. Like, do you have a media person scouting report for like the experience of being in Indianapolis for this event? Why it's so great being there, like why it works so well? If somebody's going to go for the first time this week, like do you have a breakdown like with do's and don'ts, like what is so great about having it there that makes all of us be like, no, please don't move it?
Yeah, so number one, I mean, it's a great food city. It really is. Whether it's St. Elmo's or Prime or Harry and Izzy's, like I could give people a list of. I think this is my 13th or 14th combine, so I could send you a list of great places to go for dinner. It's a great bar city, but Indy does conventions really well, and I think the fact that you can walk from the JW Marriott all the way to Lucas Oil and never go outside is fantastic. The way that they built the skywalks for the Super Bowl when it was there, it just makes it really easy to get around. It's a very walkable city and it's not big. So you can go everywhere you need to without having to get in an Uber. I've been at events where you don't even see other media people. It's just, you're so spread out. So I would say it's about the combine as well. The Senior Bowl and the combine. They both do it well because everything's so centrally located that it's very easy to get around. It's very easy to run into people. Selfishly, I hope it stays in Indy because it's very easy for everyone to get to. It's centrally located. It's also not super expensive. If they put this thing in LA, me, when I was first starting out, would not have been able to go. It would have been too expensive, so they need to keep it somewhere, in my opinion, where it is still affordable for folks who are, especially in this age of media that we're in, where so many people are building and doing their own thing. It has to be affordable. And if you put it in LA or New York or, wherever, you got to make it, I think, centrally located and to where it's still affordable for people.
You mentioned the landscape, and I love that you touched on that. Like for two guys that cut their teeth on blogs that like nobody read at the beginning and then slowly built. Like, how cool is it to see so many people like being able to have access to just put their stuff out there, to have a voice, to be a part of it, and kudos to events like the Senior Bowl and like the Combine who are credentialing these places and giving them opportunities to be in the room where these things are happening. I know, again, the journeys that you and I have both had similar in certain ways where it's like it's great to see those opportunities still being given that we were able to take advantage of.
I wish I had counted because I feel like my first combine, there might have been like 50 or 60 media members, and it was it was honestly a lot of beat writers from the Chicago Tribune and the Kansas City Star. And there wasn't a lot of people doing internet. There weren't very many people doing TV at all. And so to see it now to where we used to just have tables in the concourse at Lucas Oil, and now it's an entire convention center, and so it's to see it blow up is awesome. And hopefully it continues. I think it has to be tough for young media members right now to get in and see a pathway. For me, it was Bleacher Report, and I spent 10 years there. And I think that's a hard thing right now. And it's tough, man. So it is great to see, whether it be at the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl or the Combine, to see like young content creators, young people want to cover the draft still. I think that's a really cool thing.
Now, the last thing I want to do before we let you go, we're gonna do this every episode, and I want to get everybody's opinions because I'm a nostalgia, like I'm a sucker for anything old school. You see all the Bucko Bruce stuff behind me. I don't know if you can see it in this shot, but I like a ton of like old Buck stuff. I just love going back and looking at the history of the game, and particularly when it comes to the draft, I love there's that viral tweet that like dudes just love to sit around and name like random baseball players from 1970. I love to do that with like the draft stuff. We're the idiots who like when the Sunday night game is on and they announce the players, like we're trying to guess every college before they say it because like we all play that game. So we're gonna do this every episode where I'm just gonna give you a random guy from draft history that just sparks my memory. And if you want to think of one, I hope you will have one as well. But my guy, I'm gonna be a homer here. The University of South Florida, where I went to school, did not have a football program until 1997. Okay? 10 years later, they were number 2 in the country. Okay, they beat like number 5 West Virginia, that Pat White, Steve Slayton team. They beat that team in Tampa. They like sold out Raymond James Stadium. But before that, the first graduating class in USF history, this was the 2001 NFL draft. And the first draft pick in the history of USF, nobody got picked until the 4th round. But the first 3 picks of the 4th round of the 2001 NFL draft were all USF players, if you go back and look. So, like, nobody took anybody from USF. It's like, who's going to do it first? Who's going to do it first? Nobody's literally ever come out of this program. And then somebody did. The Patriots took Kenyatta Jones, offensive tackle. Then the Cardinals took Bill Gramatica, the kicker, who is Martin Gramatica's brother, right? So those were the bookend picks. But the pick in the middle is a guy that I still don't think people remember that he existed. And it's Anthony Henry, who played defensive back. He was drafted by the Browns, but he played 9 years. He played in Dallas. He played in Detroit. He was a 4th-round pick out of a program that had literally never had football until 1997. He intercepted 10 passes as a rookie and started 2 games.
That's wild. I don't remember that. That's wild.
Exactly. That's what I'm telling you, man. So go back and look. He picked off 10 passes as a rookie in the Super Bowl era. So 1967, 70 onward. 3 guys have done that. Everson Walls did it in 1981, which he's his own ridiculous story from like basically walking on at Grambling and becoming an All-American, undrafted free agent, and he picks off double digits for the Cowboys as an undrafted free agent. Nobody learned to stop picking on him, I guess. And Mark Carrier for the Bears in 1990 was the other one. He was a top 5 pick, so that at least made some sense. But Anthony Henry, he picks off 10 passes as a rookie for the Browns. Wasn't a Pro Bowler or anything. Again, he only started 2 games, but ended up playing almost a decade in the league. I think he was in like an Ice-T movie. He moved to LA and became like an actor for a minute. I think he owns a bunch of Paneras now. I did a bunch of research on him this week. But that's my random guy from draft history. If you're a Browns fan, you're a Cowboys fan, hopefully you remember Anthony Henry and put some respect on that man's name for picking off 10 passes as a rookie.
I'll have to come back with one. If you let me back on, I'll be prepared. I'll have one.
Please do. I just want, like, they're just names that just pop into, like, Co Simpson. Do you remember who Co Simpson is?
Yeah.
He's a safety from South Carolina, I believe.
Yeah. So my thing is, like, I have my brother who's as big of a draft nerd as I am. So I'll just randomly text him names and be like, or like when Eric Allen, the Eagles and Raiders corner, when it was announced he made the Hall of Fame, my phone started blowing up. You would have thought we were family members. But when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Eric Allen. And I, at one point, had every football card ever made of Eric Allen, which is, I grew up a 49ers fan in Southwest Missouri. I had no connections to Eric Allen other than I loved how he played. Like I was number 21 when I was young because I wanted, like, Eric Allen was my favorite player, not named Jerry Rice. So maybe I do have one. Yeah, mine is, now NFL Hall of Famer. And it was funny because for years I've been saying, like, this guy's a Hall of Famer, and everyone just thought everyone I know, like, around here thought I was crazy. And so then as soon as he got inducted, my brother was the first one to text me, and then several other people were like, "Hey, your guy finally made it." I was like, "Yes." That's
glorious.
I've never met him before. He's not my guy, but
he's my guy. That's my guy.
Yeah, I'm happy for him.
I love it, man. Well, listen, before I let you go, I know it's not hard to find your work because you're everywhere these days, but tell everybody who's going to be watching what you're going to be up to this week, where they can find what you're doing at the Combine and beyond heading up to the draft.
Well, like 15 minutes after you and I get off, I'll be on NFL Live. So I don't know how quickly you'll turn this around, but you can go back and watch Monday's NFL Live if you missed it. And then, I'll be on SportsCenter and NFL Live all week from the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll be doing recaps on ESPN.com, and you can follow on basically every social media app at NFL Draft Scout.
Beautiful. Matt, thanks so much for taking the time, man. Have a safe trip to Indy. Enjoy the rest of the process. And again, thanks again for doing this, man.
You bet. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Thanks to Matt Miller from ESPN for taking the time on one of the busiest weeks of this time of year for any NFL draft analyst. We're excited for the Combine. We can't wait for all the action. We're going to be analyzing everything at athlonsports.com, so make sure you are there every day during the Combine. We'll have live coverage. Our own Doug Farrar will be there in Indy, bringing us all kinds of analysis. We'll be, again, hitting it from every different angle. If you are already aware of the Athlon Sports brand, it likely has something to do with the fact that every year we put out the premier NFL draft guide to preview the entire event. We're talking scouting reports, over 200 scouting reports on this year's top players, mock drafts, rankings. an analysis of all 32 teams as they look ahead to the draft, specific team needs and where all those teams are set up. This year's magazine is about to hit the stands, so you want to make sure you look out for that. Anywhere you buy magazines, you're going to be able to get all the best content leading up to the NFL draft in the magazine and the most updated content on athlonsports.com. But that's going to wrap it up. The first episode of the best podcast available is in the books. We hope you join us next week. We're going to have all kinds of great content leading up to the draft and then going on through the rest of the year as we preview the college football season. We preview the upcoming 2026 draft class after the 2025 draft is over. And so we're going to have it all year round, everything you need to know leading up to the draft. And find us on social media. I'm at Luke Easterling. Let us know what you want to see on this show. We want you to be a part of it as well. We'll have some fun fan segments as we get into the year. So once again, I'm Luke Easterling. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.